Welcome, wonderful listener. I'm your host, Carrie B. Van Winkle, and you are listening to the Smart and Soulful Money Podcast. I'm a socially responsive investment advisor and certified financial transitionist. This season, I'm naming and exploring important dimensions of what we inherit in our money lives, financial or otherwise, and how we move forward from there. More specifically, I'll be talking about how I work with women and other traditionally marginalized people who are inheritors, helping them move through the experience of inheritance in a way that can positively change how they engage in their money life, achieve their money goals, invest in the way that is aligned with their values, and transform the legacy they want to leave for their loved ones and in the bigger world. Whether you are an inheritor, anticipate this experience in your future or not, we all inherit when it comes to our money lives, whether that is a financial inheritance, inheriting systems, culture, stories, or mindset. While an inheritance is often generations in the making, many of the dimensions of this experience for women and other traditionally marginalized people have yet to be named and understood. Let's begin to do that here. In this episode of the Smart and Soulful Money Podcast, I want to focus on relationships, communication, and give you a couple of methods or tools that you could bring in to help support you in this next step of confidently engaging in your money life as an inheritor. This episode, with its focus on relationships and communication, really connect to every phase of the experience of a financial transition and an inheritor's experience of financial transition. In the first episode of this series, I focused on the experience of noticing. And if you haven't listened to that one, I encourage you to go back and listen to that one. I set the stage on just kind of this waking up to the experience that you're having as an inheritor in transition, in financial transition. And that waking up is really, the first step of that is really starting to notice and maybe even name what the experience is that you're going through, and particularly the challenges of that experience. So this episode brings us to naming the next part of that experience and talking about communication and how communication is everything when it comes to the relationships in our money life and the relationships in our life. I'll bring in two tools and methods that I think could be helpful to you as you navigate communication and relationships in your experience of financial transition and in your money life. An inheritor typically has the experience of navigating relationships that often, as our relationships are, have their sticky spots and challenge spots. I want to talk about three key areas of relationship that an inheritor often experiences. And so the first area is the relationship with the person you're inheriting from. That could be the patriarch of the family, as it has been so much in the past, but it doesn't have to be, of course. But there is something that often can be challenging about navigating that relationship with the person you are inheriting from. And then the second key relationship we're going to talk about is the relationship with the inheritor's children. Depending on what stage you're at in your life as an inheritor, you may have children or you may have other dependents that are part of your lineage going forward, your future, the future lineage of your inheritance. And so that's a really important area to be able to navigate with integrity and confidence and the communication that you want to have so that it's healthy for you and it's healthy for them as much as possible. And then the third key area is the professional team. And the professional team, that this is the financial professional team. And they might not all literally be a team in the same office space, all of that. But your financial team includes likely a financial advisor. If there's a trust or some trust involved, it could include a trustee for the trust. It likely includes an accountant or an accounting firm. It could include an attorney, estate planner, but the key professional team is usually a financial advisor and at least the financial advisor team or individual, and then an accountant or an accounting team. Navigating the relationships there is its own thing and very important and often can be challenging. Let's go back to the first key relationship, the relationship with the patriarch. So the challenges here, depending on the foundation of that relationship, there often is lots of love underlying the relationship, even if there are also lots of challenges. And that love really informs how a lot of inheritors then navigate their experience of inheritance. In navigating the relationship with a parent, a grandparent, for example, a lot of times it's a parent or a grandparent, and they might be the wealth creator, the wealth creator, the originator of the wealth that you are inheriting. Or they might be the recipient of wealth from prior generations, and it's passing through them. They're the current key family person responsible for the wealth, and then they're also responsible for passing the legacy forward. You may be experiencing the challenges as an inheritor that are painful, especially if the existing relationship with this patriarch, for example, has a history of being challenged already. And then bringing the money into it and the complications of the inheritance and navigating that, throw in some financial advisors and for financial professional team, it can really be sticky and challenging to navigate this. And all the money stuff can create more of a charge when it comes to potentially an already challenging relationship that you're navigating. A lot of times what inheritors can experience is related to kind of control and power dynamics, decision making, who's making decisions that directly impact the inheritor's life or future. How are those decisions being made and why are they being made in that way? Influence how the patriarch, with the power of having control of the money in the way that they may, the power that they have in your life, the influence they may have in your life and if you have children in their lives. This is a lot to navigate. Two methods that I think can be really helpful at this phase, after you're starting to notice some things just aren't right. You're starting to name this experience and what's not feeling right for you, is to really work on communication, to start to do something different when it comes to your communication in this point with the person you're inheriting from. That may be, for example, the patriarch, it might be your parents, it might be your grandparents. Starting to shift your communication. And so the first place I would go there, so one takeaway I want you to have from this episode is the first place you can start with shifting your communication is asking questions. And this is not easy. This is hard. You haven't done it. You haven't been doing it. I'm guessing that's very likely that you've shut yourself down from asking the questions that you've had. You might be asking some, but I bet you're talking yourself out of asking some others. And so this, I think, is such a powerful tool for women in general to ask questions. I have my own work in this area of asking questions, feeling confident, especially in areas that I really judge myself, that I feel very vulnerable in, where there might be some gender dynamics at play or other things that cause me to really judge myself. And so I don't ask the questions that I need to be asking. And so asking questions is a powerful, powerful way to start shifting. So what I encourage you to do is make this manageable. For example, the next time you're in a conversation related to the inheritance or related to money with the patriarch or with the person you're inheriting from, ask a question. Don't go for the big question, the hardest question. Just ask something that feels manageable, that feels doable. But what you're doing here is you're asking questions muscles. And that's what I encourage you to do, is just ask more questions, start with some easier questions, and then build your muscle. That's the only change I would say to start with here. This can be really powerful. And as you build that asking questions muscle, repetitively over time, you're going to understand more than you understood before. You're going to shut yourself down less as far as asking questions goes. So you're going to get more of the information that you really need to have to engage in the conversations. People are going to understand more what information they need to be providing to you. And, there are just so many positive ripple effects from this. It takes courage and bravery to do this. The dynamics I see so much are, you're the daughter around a table with a son and a father and the professionals in their suits who are probably white men, and so asking a question around that table isn't easy. And my experience personally and with a lot of my clients is they don't want to sound stupid. They don't want to ask a stupid question. They judge themselves and feel like they should know more about this already, and so they just won't ask the question. And so this just continues to uphold this status quo of you not feeling able to engage and able to feel the confidence that you want to feel and able to get in there and understand more about the inheritance and engage in the money conversation in a way that that you want to and you need to be doing. So something else to add here that I think is very real in the experience of a lot of women inheritors and inheritors who have traditionally been marginalized in our society is the reaction that you get when you ask a question. I've experienced this myself in my late 20s, not yet a financial advisor, sitting down with a financial advisor, asking some questions and getting the looks, getting a patronizing look. You can see it. I'm giving you the look. Tilted head, funny look in your eyes. That patronizing look, that look alone can really shut someone down. And I know that shut me down. How dare I ask these silly questions to this professional who knows way better than I do, even though the answer that I got I knew was not fully addressing or honoring what I was asking. They were not fully responding in the way that a good advisor for me would respond. Go ahead and prepare yourself before you start this exercise of asking questions, asking more questions, is prepare yourself with something that supports you. So how will you feel supported in that moment when you get that look from your family member, when you get that patronizing response from a financial professional? Well, let's start there. Let's not even go yet to somebody gives you an answer and you have no idea what they just said. So those looks and that patronizing response. So what do you do with that? Decide what would help you feel supported in that moment. And it could be a word that you tell yourself so that your judgment brain isn't, going off, your inner critic isn't going off in that moment, where you just add to the negative experience that you're having. This is about you building that muscle and being proud and affirming that this is a good thing what you're doing. This is not only good, but this is an important thing that you're doing. If you have that awareness, bring it back to, why is this important for me to be asking these questions? Why does this matter? Take that in and have some kind of word or something that connects you back to that why in that moment. And then when you get out of there, pat yourself on the back. Don't start to question yourself or judge yourself for sounding not smart or whatever it is. When you get out of there, be sure and love on yourself. Show compassion and be proud of yourself. And if you have another person in your life that you can share that with beforehand, and then you can share that kind of victory with afterward, fantastic. Not all of us have that, but if you do have that, I think that's fantastic to build in that support as you start to make some changes here, because they're not easy. The other piece of that, what if the reaction is, okay, you asked a question, I'm going to answer your question, but it's in investment advisor speak, which a lot of times is, people just are like, what are you talking about? And then again, we judge ourselves. I should understand what they're saying, all the shoulds and the judgment there. I would say in that moment, you might tell yourself, the point here is that you asked the question. And that's the goal, starting to build the question muscles. So you don't have to fully 100% understand everything that they're saying. When I take my car in for its maintenance and they say, okay, here's what's going on, da 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 da, I don't fully understand 100% of what they're saying, but hopefully I at least get the gist of it so that I can make some decisions and choices in an informed way that help me engage more confidently with that responsibility of being a car owner. And hopefully that's where you can get with this too, is step by step in this process of asking more questions, you can get more to that place of engaging confidently as an inheritor in the situations that you are in as an inheritor. So the next key area of relationships that inheritors might experience is a relationship with your children or dependents of some kind in your life. And so if this doesn't apply to you, it doesn't apply. But I do want to bring it up because it is an important one for those people who do have children. That's its own dynamic in the experience of being an inheritor. The inheritors I work with who have children and those who also don't have children still leave a legacy. And if there is wealth that is left at the end of my client's life, then they do want to leave a legacy of positive impact, whether that be on children, other family members, or organizations that might have focus areas that are very important to my clients. I'll name it children, but it could be broader than that. So as you navigate this relationship with children, you might see yourself as creating some alchemy of change, receiving the inheritance, and then really transforming that legacy in certain ways. The opportunity to change power dynamics, to change the way that your children are going to experience being able to communicate about their inheritance, the way they're going to experience power dynamics, control or not, related patriarchy that's built into so much of the experience of inheritance. You're going to have some opportunity at different points in your inheritance experience to create some change that will be exciting and meaningful for you to leave for children. So communication, building your communication muscle is just as important here with children. And particularly, I would say, whether it be the preceding generation or the following generation from you, of course, we don't talk about money enough in our culture, and we definitely don't have healthy money conversations, enough. So within the context of recognizing that, talk to your children more. Figure out what you feel is appropriate for the timing that they're in now. There's some great resources out there now to support healthy conversations with children so that they develop a healthier relationship with money themselves, which is a foundation for how they will navigate being an inheritor later. So communication's key there. As a certified financial transitionist, one of the most important tools we use is called Managing Expectations tool. I'm really excited to share this tool with you. And the way we start this, when I do this with a client, so if I'm noticing the client is talking about, for example, here I'm talking about the relationship with the child or children. So if I notice the client is saying, I'm going through this experience of inheritance and I have some concerns about navigating these conversations with my children, especially if children are a bit older, teenagers, and then in adulthood, this starts to come up more. And a parent or someone who feels this connection with leaving a legacy to children in their life, there are probably assumptions and expectations. So that's where we start. So we just do kind of a brain dump, a brainstorm about naming them. What are the assumptions that either you have as the inheritor? We could start there. And I think a lot of inheritors have a lot of assumptions. Oh, I'm supposed to do this. I should do this. And also assumptions that you think the child might have. So let's say the child is an adult child of 30 years old. And so your adult child of 30 years old, what assumptions do they have about you being an inheritor and then potentially them inheriting as the future generation? What are those assumptions? Sometimes it's helpful to talk about why those assumptions are there, to dig into that a little bit more. And it could be an expectation. So expectation 2, what are the expectations? Do you think your children have certain expectations of you financially? Do you think they're waiting for you to be responsible for their retirement? Do you think they're waiting for you to be responsible for their children's education expenses? Do you think they always expect you to host and pay for family vacations or to help pay off their house or buy them a car? You know, what are the things that you think they are carrying when it comes to expectations of you financially? And then do you have expectations of yourself or expectations of them? So we just do a good brain dump there. And then we might start with a grouping of those assumptions and expectations that all really kind of connect to one another, or we pick one that feels like the most charged, the most challenging, or probably the one that's the most timely, the most present in your life at this point. And then we go through this reflection process of asking some questions that help you get into what we create together, which is a personal statement. And that sounds kind of big and lofty, personal statement, but it's a simple but really powerful thing that you can create through this process that helps you in the moment with the child. You know, when the child brings up, are you going to host us for vacation this year? And you realize, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that in the way that I did that in the past. Or I'm not going to be able to do that in the way your grandparent did that for us. My financial situation is different. This just really helps you proactively have a response ready and prepared so that you are able to offer something that feels loving, that feels aligned with who you are and how you want to be in this relationship with your child, and also clearly communicates the reality of your situation and helps, again, manage the expectations of the child. It's really this wonderful, powerful tool, and it's challenging, and so it's great to not do this by yourself. It's great to do it with somebody who can help support you as you go through these reflection questions and then craft that statement. a big time, I think that this is so important with an inheritor, is if you are suddenly an inheritor where your parent, for example, may have passed away recently, suddenly you have this inheritance that is fully yours, and you have these people, whether it be a child or a grandchild, another family member, other people in your life. There are so many people, even the financial professionals in your life. There are so many ways that this tool can be used to really support you as you navigate these kinds of financial experiences. The third key area when it comes to relationships that I want to talk about today is your professional team. One reality that most inheritors navigate here is that they're not only inheriting money or assets from a parent, a grandparent, someone else passing along wealth to you. You're not only inheriting that part of it, but you're also inheriting people. So you're inheriting your parents' financial advisor, for example. You're inheriting your grandparents' accounting team. You're inheriting a trustee that was appointed by your uncle who was the primary manager of the family wealth in his generation. So there are all these people that you are finding yourself having to interact with, build relationships with, that you didn't necessarily choose. It's like having your own company and you didn't hire anybody to help you do this really important work that you want to be doing in your life and in the world. So it can be very challenging, especially because the reality that we're still very much in is these professional teams usually are very centered on, I want to say the patriarch, because a lot of times it is a patriarch in the family, but it's of course not always that. But they're very centered on the wealth holder, the prior person who is in charge of the wealth. They're very centered there. And what I have found with my clients is they are not the center of their own inheritance experience when they also have inherited the professional team of the patriarch, the parents, the grandparents. And so communication can be a big challenge when it comes to these professional teams, like the accounting team or the financial advisor team. I think here really ties back to that first tool that I mentioned, or that first method, which is asking the questions. Just more and more starting to ask questions of this professional team. And it is not easy for somebody who's not super confident in talking about money to ask questions to an accounting team. It is not easy. And it's so important. It's so important. And it's also honestly not easy to discern, is this enough information? Do I need to fully understand their answer? Have I gotten enough of an answer to satisfy what I really need to know today? That's a tough call a lot of times, and that's okay. I think that's just a reality for a lot of people navigating financial conversations. And so I think you just have to decide in the moment, and also give yourself permission that if you didn't get something in the moment, and you have follow-up questions, or if you're like me, I'm a big after the fact processor. So in the moment, I take in a lot of information, and a lot of times I need to take it away and do more processing. And that's why for me, a lot of key decisions, I know it's not in my best interest usually to make those in the moment, that I need some time to sleep on it. I need some time to reflect. I need some time to digest and process. And that will help support me in making better decisions, especially when they're really important decisions. Give yourself permission to do that. Honor what your process is. And then also tell yourself it's fine to call them the next day or to email them a couple of days later and say, hey, I didn't fully understand what you were saying about this. Could you explain that a little bit more to me? In those moments where you do that, again, you might get reactions that really are unfortunate. You might get reactions that don't feel good in that moment. But I just commend you to still ask the questions, honor yourself, build the muscle. It will matter. It will make a difference. It will build on itself. You will notice a difference step by step of doing that for yourself and for your legacy. So to close out this episode, again, we talked about the experience of noticing is really that first part. We talked about that in the last episode. Now we're talking about navigating relationships and some communication shifts that we can take by asking questions, building our asking questions muscle, and managing expectations of ourselves and others. Those two methods are really key ways to start to shift our communication when it comes to our experience as an inheritor. Once we start this noticing, we're going to want to do something with it. And I just encourage you not to go too far too fast. You can really start again in a more important, meaningful, but also kind of gentle way with yourself of building that muscle, of making some shifts, as I've talked about in this episode, for change, but in a way that does feel supportive of you, does feel supportive of your relationships, and has some grace built into it for yourself and for others. Thank you for listening to the Smart and Soulful Money Podcast. If you have found the podcast helpful, please be sure to leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast player. It really makes a difference. To ensure you get the next episode when it goes live, please hit subscribe or follow. In the episode notes, you can find direct links to follow me on Instagram, sign up to learn about new episodes, and to find out more about my work as a socially responsive investment advisor. Until next time, remember it is possible to have an approach to your money life that is both smart and soulful.